Good evening. I'm Father Russ Carmichael, and this is Street Talk. Okay, again, I want to thank you people for allowing me in your home. I've been all over the state this week, lots of TV shows, lots of great guests. Across the table from me, I have my co-host back. Okay, you probably saw a few shows. He wasn't around, Dominic. But I got my favorite lady from our area, okay, back here, Senator Cathy Osten.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Okay, you're always so informative and tell us, what's going on. I do have to say, we were hoping we were going to have the lady from the dyslexia situation.
Oh, yeah, something must have come up.
Come up, and
we do have a bill this year on dyslexia
Right.
to provide evidence-based educational training for teachers to recognize the signs of dyslexia. Also to do some work with higher education so that teachers are trained to recognize dyslexia. So it's and provide some credit requirements on training. So it's a really good piece of legislation. We're working on it right now to put the finishing touches on it and hope to get it through both the Senate and the House and ultimately signed by the governor.
Yeah, well, it's a serious situation, and it's
Correct.
a serious issue. I'm dyslexic, so...
We actually sent in written testimony for the bill.
Yeah, we did,
And-
that's
and
right.
believe it or not,
I forgot.
I went to somebody else's sort of constituent hour for two senators up in the Seymour area, and this actually got brought up because it was a school administrator from Seymour, and they were talking about some of the things that are mandated, and I'm like explaining. I was like, I'm fully in support of this. I suffered through this through my early education, and I know how much it really put me off until I got to college, and I found a way to get around my spelling dyslexia. Well, but I know how much of a difference having somebody be able to tell me what my problem was in the first place would have meant to me.
Oh, it's
Right.
unbelievable. Scotland, I had information because I'm always following my relatives over there. They have huge programs over there, way ahead of where we
Scotland,
are.
the country.
The country, Scotland, the
Okay,
country.
I just want to make sure
Yeah,
because there's a little town right down the road from me in Scotland.
Scotland,
Yes.
the country. They have major programs over there for people who, are dyslexic, and they have their definition of what it was, what it is. Your reading, speech, awareness problems, memory problems, all are involved in the situation. But they got great programs over there. That's what we were hoping to talk about, and I know.
Well, Allison Quirion, she is the founder of Decoding Dyslexia
Right.
here in Connecticut, and she's one of the best grassroots advocates that I've ever met. Totally on her own, has done all the research, has gone all through all the programs in the United States and abroad, and brought in the best of those so that we weren't reinventing the wheel. She's super smart and really dedicated, and did this as a result of her son being diagnosed with dyslexia and not getting what she felt was the appropriate resources in their school. But she's just done a tremendous job of raising awareness, and we actually have people from every single district that has called their legislators. And that's a lot of hard work.
There's a lot of hard work. We well know that.
Yep.
And we met her, and we had met her at the actually with you at opening the Senate.
Yep.
When we were up there. Dynamite lady, and hopefully that she's fine. And if she gets here late, we'll sit her down. Now, but I do want to segue into something else you and I were just talking about, and I knew before you talked about putting that bill about the children and the.
So I work with a lot of people in the district, and one of the women that runs a group called Bully Busters in Norwich, Connecticut, Debbie Kivitz. And she said to me in passing one day, you know, it's a huge problem that we're noticing more and more, that children are having utility bills put in their name, whether it's water or sewer or gas or electric or cable or telephone. And I said, oh, really? And she said, and you know, when they turn 18 and they go to get either their first a college loan or a credit card or get their own apartment, a credit check is done and they find out that they have bad credit. And so when they go to the utility company to say, you know, I was 12 when this bill was put in my name, I wasn't even old enough to consent to this. The utility companies were saying to them, that's really your problem, not ours. This bill was in your name and you have to pay it. And not only do you have to pay it, you have to pay the interest on top of it. And if you want to get the money back from your family, you have to take your family to small claims court. Well, you know as well as I do that
that's a
you're not going to do that.
No.
And it might not even be a family member. It could have been a step family. It could have been somebody that absconded with your history. And the utility company said it's really not our problem. Well, we've decided to make it the utilities problem, and you know, and have.
That's why I love you, Kathy.
We have made it so we've passed the bill in the Senate. We're waiting for the House to bring it up, and hopefully, ultimately, the governor will sign it. But what we're saying is that the utility companies, because there are already programs that can tell how old somebody is, because you have your social security number to open an account, and they can already tell the age of someone, and they will not be able to put the utility bills in the name of a child under the age of 18. And you know, there's always those special circumstances. If someone's emancipated, they can provide the correct documentation. But this also doesn't allow, if the utility company does put it in that child's name, they have to take it off that child's credit rating. They have to assume the responsibility of the costs of it, and then you know, ultimately it clears up the credit of the child. Now, this has happened not just with utilities, and it has come to my attention recently that there are some people who have taken out college loans in the name of the 17 or 18-year-old, and then spent the money but not on college, and the child is ultimately responsible for that. So that's something I'm looking at next.
Wow, interesting.
Isn't that amazing?
Interesting.
You know what, I'm
Fraudulent stuff,
One
huh?
of the things I need to go through and do, unfortunately, I had Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they broke into all the numbers, and I'm one of the things that I need to do is I need to actually go and check my son's credit history to see if anybody has tried to take his social security number and his information to try to go open accounts or do other things. It's just amazing what we have to do to protect our kids.
So, you know, I put the bill in, and we had a public hearing on the bill, and I presented testimony for it. And and both the two chairs of the Energy Committee said they looked at each other and they were just dumbfounded that this was going on. And one of the state representatives from Bridgeport was on the committee, and he said, I thought this was just a Bridgeport problem. And I said, no, it's happening all over the state.
All over the place, right?
So everybody was so appreciative that I put that piece of legislation forward, and I was really very excited about that. I have another piece of legislation in this year. I probably put in about 50 bills this year. All they're very divergent. They travel a whole host of issues. And this one would help out small towns. It's endorsed by the United States Department of Agriculture. It's to allow USDA to afford small towns under the population of 20,000 with the ability to have a loan through USDA for 40 years or the useful life of a project. So many people don't even know that USDA lends money and gives grants out to small towns.
To small towns, yeah.
At a very low interest rate to do projects like bridges, elevators and buildings.
They do bridges and everything.
They do.
Okay. That's
bridges
interesting.
and
Okay.
infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
They do dams. They work on a whole host of things, and they've.
This is Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, I always think of them, yeah,
Oh,
right,
no,
I always think
the
of
town of-
farming and, you know.
The town of Bolton and Andover
Wow.
put in their whole sewer
Nice.
system with USDA. This is something, and I've always used the USDA programs in the town of Sprague to help us out.
Yeah,
Now,
but you know how to run a town.
this
See,
is-
I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but you seem to have master plan on how to run things. You've got a
We've done
great
a, we've
place.
done a wonderful job in Sprague, and that's because I have a group of good citizens that get together, and we've worked to do things together. But back to USDA.
Right, USDA.
So USDA lends money or grants money to towns, and they've always had the right to have loans or grants for water and wastewater for 40 years. Well, they also help out fire districts, some of our volunteer fire districts, to build new fire departments or fire buildings, and then they also help out with public works garages or with community
huh?
centers or senior centers in towns. And so while they could always do 40 years for water and wastewater, and they couldn't do it for other types of infrastructure, and this bill will allow them to do for other types of infrastructure. Now, we also have the normal, this is just permissive, it's a permissive bill. They still have the normal ways of making sure the community is involved. You have to have a public hearing, you have to have a notice, you have to have it approved through your legislative body. So it's not something that happens unless a town or a district approves those particular issues. And so it's
right.
something that is truly could be used for a whole host of issues. And
Seriously grassroots.
seriously grassroots, and it's a
Right,
very,
yeah.
very good program. The interest rates are low, and it allows the cost of a project to be spread over 40 years if that project has a useful life of 40 years. So it doesn't work if something has a useful life of, say, 10 years, but if a bridge has usually 50 to 75 years, and in the state of Connecticut, we have bridges that are 200 and 300 years old, quite frankly,
And this is for communities that are below what size?
populations of 20,000.
20,000.
Oh, you guys are just missing the cutoff here. You're
I
25,000.
don't know if we keep this man
You might not be.
We be under it quick.
So this bill passed again on a bipartisan basis.
That's
Another bipartisan piece of legislation that was passed out of the Senate was signed by one of the, Senator Whitcombs also is a co-sponsor of this bill, and Senator Flexer came about as a genesis of a meeting I had in Congressman Courtney's office with the Department, the USDA, and I recognize the value for small towns of being able to do some of these larger projects and spread the cost out over a longer period. And USDA always requires community involvement, so they always have that piece of it too.
Well, that kind of takes the issue of having to go out and try to bond.
Well, there's
some of
still,
this out.
this is essentially a bond, but it's just a longer-term bond. It provides you with the 40 years instead of a normal bond is about 20 years.
But I'm saying having to go through the public sector
Correct.
to try to bond when.
You could do either one.
Yeah.
You could do either one, depending on what you decide is in your best interest.
Sure.
And so towns can make that decision based on what they would like to do.
Yeah, it's really interesting, an interesting way of financing. I like that, but I had no idea. Agriculture, I just had no idea that they do that.
Oh, they do a whole host of, the town of Sprague has used them for wells and sewer projects and pump stations and bridges and elevators and upgrades to buildings.
Which you upgraded, that you led the way on all that stuff.
Yes, it was wonderful. It's a truly wonderful way to get things done in a community that's smaller in nature and cannot necessarily afford all the upfront costs. Some of the larger cities have a wider tax base, but in the smaller towns, we don't have that ability. And again, all community involvement, so it's never done behind the scenes. USDA requires that transparent, open government approach to things. So it's a very good, and the state treasurer signed on to this, saying that it could save towns money in upfront costs of the projects. So, and the interest rates are 2.35. So.
Well, speaking of big, huge projects,
Mm-hmm.
you managed to, I think you have one of the largest solar projects
Oh yes, it's
in this region going up in your town.
a 20 megawatt solar farm going up. It's in front of the siting council now, so it's still got a little bit of ways to go on the approval process. It has enough energy to provide some 4,000 homes with energy. It's being sold into the grid, the energy that's produced. It's a very low maintenance way for the town to get additional tax revenue, and it's green energy, which is something that we're all trying to do
I'm all
more
for it.
of.
I actually just signed my solar
He
contract,
just
so
signed his.
they're going to be putting it on my
Right.
roof in about the next month.
I think that it's a great project. We want to make sure that the neighbors are happy with it. This is going to be out in the middle of the woods. Well, there's not going to be much woods around. They're going to cut most of the trees down. So we're going to do some natural vegetation buffering along any place where it sort of would be viewed. Quite frankly, there's not very many people around there, but you want to make sure that those people are also happy about it too.
Right.
So again, we just had a public informational hearing on it, and that was the biggest issue that came up. Now, the property that it's going on is privately owned, so they're leasing. The company is leasing the land from those private landowners, and so this is truly a private partnership, private-public partnership.
Public-private.
And
Yeah,
they're
that's
selling,
nice.
they eventually may get some tax abatements. We would look at that, make sure that in order to make sure that the town is getting its fair share of revenue, and we're still promoting a good business in the area. So it's something that I'm really excited about. It'll be the largest solar system on this side of the Mississippi.
Yep.
And I'm really
Thanks, Dad.
very, very excited
You
about
got to
it.
be excited and
I
proud
am.
about it. I mean, right? And I was just going to say now, job development in your area has been kind of tough, right?
Correct.
With the loss of the
Fusion.
The paper mill,
the
yes.
paper mill and everything else. Now, where do you see yourself going in that area? Do you? What's-
Well, I was
know,
finally able to reconstitute the Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
And while we don't own the land that the paper mill is on, it's still owned by a private equity firm. And they've been reticent to do anything sort of, in my opinion, the right way.
Right.
They tout on their website that they were owned by Open Gate Capital, and Open Gate Capital said they made 3 times their investment in Fusion. But I think it's really easy to make 3 times your investment when you don't take care of the workers. They went into every 401k that every individual 401k for the 145 workers, and took out between $1,000 and $2,000 out of every single person's 401k in the form of an administrative fee. We disputed that, and because the administrative fee wasn't clearly outlined in the 401k documents, it turns out that that's legal. I'm not certain it's moral, but clearly a bad company can do that. They then didn't pay their vendors. There are some 200 vendors that they have not paid. Then they paid back part of the state loan, but not all of it. So they owe the state about $1.8 million. And they haven't paid the town their taxes yet. So it's really easy to make 3 times your amount of money, but not do any of the things that you're supposed to do. And I find we have people that are interested in buying the mill. I've had upwards of 15 developers right now that have called the town and asked to, for us to help them get in contact with the owners, and the owners don't call any of them back.
What a shame.
So I really think that that's, I consider them probably one of the new forms of robber barons. Of course, years ago, robber barons used to build things up. This one is just tearing things down.
Tearing it down.
And I'm very disappointed in that sort of behavior. And some people say that that's business being business. I find that businesses are generally good community partners and want to work with the community. This private equity firm is shedding itself of Fusion as we speak, but is not meeting any of its obligations.
Yeah, it really is a shame. We got a caller. I don't know. I bet you this is Ray, right?
Probably.
Good evening. You're on Street Talk with Father Russ. Senator, hello?
I should have bet you, Russ. You would have lost.
Yeah,
I have a question for Senator Osten. I was looking through some stuff, what's going on in Hartford and all, and I came across this gentleman, Martin Looney from New Haven, majority leader, Senate majority leader, and he put forth Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee passed a reform bill on taxes for towns, and some of it has to do with boosting payments in lieu of taxes, revising the method of taxing vehicles, and some other stuff. I was wondering if Senator Osten is aware of this, and if so, now that the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee passed it, how many steps does it have to go before it becomes reality? And I'll hang up and listen.
thanks, Dennis.
So just so you know, it's the, Senator Looney is the president of the Senate.
President of the Senate.
This year. He was the majority leader last year, but he is now the president. And he put a bill forth in front of the Planning and Development Committee, which was called SB 1. And Senate Bill 1 was then sent from the Planning and Development Committee over to the Finance Committee. And it does talk about pilot payments, and it does reform the method of pilot payments to look at what was going on with pilot. It is pilot is payment in lieu of taxes.
In lieu of taxes. Most nonprofits deal with that, right?
Correct. Well, nonprofits, hospitals,
Right.
prisons,
Right.
state property.
Right.
So it looked at a tiered system so that a city, so we're in New London.
Right.
It looks at New London, which has a large amount of non-taxable property, and to restructure how that was paid out. It looks at capping the car tax at 29.36, I believe it is. It might be 3.4. And so that all cars, one of the disputes on the car tax was whether the state should collect the money, and not many people wanted the state to collect the money because they were fearful that it would be used for other things and not for the purposes that it had been designed for. And so in the Finance Committee, they restructured everything along with Senator Looney's basic idea that we had to reform property taxes, and we had to reform pilot in order to provide some relief to municipalities. And this would effectively, if your mill rate in the town is less than 29, you're not affected by this. You still pay what your town is charging. So if you're like a Greenwich,
Right.
and you're paying 10 mills, you still pay 10 mills. This would help out, again, cities and some rural towns that have higher mill rates than 29.3436, and it would effectively put money back into the pockets of people.
Yeah.
So
It would
that's
effectively help New Orleans.
Well, car taxes kind of cut across the whole state.
Correct.
Unlike property taxes you have an assessed amount for
Correct.
them. And so that difference differs from city to city, town to town, and then your mill rate is based off of that. Car taxes can really kill people like in the cities because,
So there's, well, like Hartford pays 74 mils
Yeah.
on cars, and it could be a car, like I have a 2005 Ford Taurus, that's my car. And, you know, it's clearly older, but what I pay for it in my town is half of what some, or quite frankly, less than half of what they pay for the same car in Hartford. So this isn't a unique way of looking at things. I think, you know, I think that we should look at property tax reform. I think that property taxes are one of the most regressive taxes that there is out there. We've put a great burden on people who own property in this state. So one of the other things that this bill looks at is a method to increase pilot payments to towns overall through the sales tax. So rather than give the money to the state, it says that and I'm ginning this conversation down, it's
Sure.
really much more
No,
complicated
It's
than
really
this, so.
complicated,
It's,
Dennis, you know?
so I'm just,
right.
I don't want you to think that this, it's as simple as this, but it gins it down. And it would provide some sales tax revenue, and essentially why they want to give sales tax revenue to the municipalities is because we've essentially flat funded municipalities for a lot of years, and the goal is to decrease the property taxes in municipalities. So for example, it says in the form that Norwich would, I think New London would get $3 million or $3.5 million. So the goal is to not give people more money to spend. The goal is to give the municipalities more money to decrease taxes.
Decrease the taxes.
That's the goal. It's not
We're about
to raise.
50%. We got about 50%, I think, it might even be more, of our community is untaxable because of, you
So
know,
there's
it's a huge.
There's a reporter named Keith Faniff who does a tremendous job on looking at budgets, and he has an article, I was reading it actually while we were sitting out there, I was glancing through it, and he breaks out a budget probably the most succinct way of anybody that I've seen do that. And he, you know, the money has to come from someplace, so,
Yeah.
so where did they decide to get the money from? They decided to decrease the sales tax but spread it out farther, so there would be some services, and this has not passed yet, so there's still going to be a lot of conversation about this. So as it is out of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, this is what it says right now, and there will be a lot of conversation about this, so you know, I'm hoping that people step back, actually look at it, and make some common sense, either suggestions or comments about it. But it would decrease the sales tax, spread it out over some services that are currently not taxed. And it would also increase the taxes, I believe, under capital gains, and those people that make $1 million or more a year.
Right.
So it touches a few things. It has some controversial ideas in it, but it is a real look that has not happened in the state of Connecticut in a long time to start addressing what's going on for the middle class. You know, the car tax is is a tax that is unfair across the board. We've been talking about this the 3 years that I've been up there. The property tax is a regressive tax. It's one of the most onerous taxes that the state of Connecticut has. And because we don't have county government, most of the taxes that are paid on our property taxes fund our educational system.
Especially when you're aged. You know, people, especially when you're aged, you reach a certain age and your income is fixed
Correct.
and you're living in your home, and I mean, you can't even afford the house you paid for.
I think you bring
Correct.
up a good point, because I know, I read part of not the same article that you were talking about, but what ends up happening is, I think a lot of people tend to focus on, okay, here's new taxes. It doesn't really, they don't tend to focus on, okay, here are the other things it's going to be decreasing or offsetting.
Correct.
In the process. So they just say, oh, it's adding $1.8 billion on, but it's reducing
Correct.
the amounts that other people are going to have to
It's
pay
a-
along those lines.
It's an actual look at a way to decrease taxes for the middle class. And I think it's an interesting look at it, but to the caller's question, that's the explanation of what is called Senate Bill 1.
Very good. Hope you like that, Dennis. And you had just met Dennis. There was that's who Dennis. That's Dennis from.
Oh, okay.
That was on there, and he follows his stuff. He's.
I think it's an interesting look at things, and I'm waiting for the conversation that's, I don't happen to sit on either appropriations or finance, so I've not been engaged in those in-depth conversations, and I'm looking forward to having those in-depth conversations on both the appropriations package and on the finance package. So I think it's a good and interesting way to actually look at real change in how we handle the structure of taxes in Connecticut.
Now, is that the same, and I don't know if this bill went through your planning committee, the one that talks about property that's in and around railroad stations and other things
No,
along the lines?
that's the that also went through my
Yeah,
committee too.
that's what I thought
I
it was.
completely rewrote that with the help of the ranking members and the other, my co-chair, completely rewrote the transit-oriented development that the governor put in front of us. There were some onerous pieces to that revolving around eminent domain. We took that out completely. We actually took care of most of the, what I think most of the most onerous pieces of it. There was, we made sure that the elected officials have a vote, not just sit on the panel, but actually have a vote in what happens. We also made sure that the plan had to go through local planning and zoning so that the municipality had a real say on it. So they had to comply with all of the planning and zoning and inland wetlands and all of the other local boards and commissions. So we looped in the municipality on a much greater level than had been done in the governor's original proposal. It's actually one of my favorite stories to tell because we get a proposal wherever we get a proposal from, whether it's the governor or another senator or state representative, or we get proposals from advocates all the time. And we have a public hearing process, and in the public hearing process, many of the things that people were skeptical of or disliked about the bill were discussed. And so after that, we went through the bill and we made changes based on public comment, which I think is the best way for a bill to actually become a law, to have that piece of public comment on things. So, you know, again, I think that that was a really wonderful way to address the issue. That bill has made it through a couple of other committees and is just made it through transportation the other day. I also sit on transportation, so made it through transportation. They have recommended a few other changes. I'll look at those recommendations and see if we can make those changes too. Hoping to, in the next 2 weeks, bring that bill out of, onto the Senate floor and have a lively debate with my colleagues in the Senate and see if there's any other necessary changes.
Well, I have to say, one thing I have noticed over the tenor of the last few months is there seems to be a lot of bipartisanship that's going on.
There is.
Up in the legislature this year.
More so than
you know,
the
I
last
think we
couple
have
of
in the
years.
past.
I felt that too, or maybe it's the type of the things that I've been dealing with or that I'm on, which is usually the justice stuff and obviously the disability issues. It appears to me that way. There seems to be more of
Well, there is, well, quite frankly, if you looked at even in years where there is a lot of negativity that happens on a political basis, you still end up with about 85% of the bills that pass on a bipartisan basis. You know, some of those disputes are a little louder than others.
Yeah.
So they tend to take up some of the oxygen in the air. But this year, there has been a lot of people who have looked at the issues on a bipartisan basis, come up with resolutions. The governor had his budget. The Republicans put out a budget that does a lot of what the budget that came out of the Appropriations Committee does, that puts services back in. I think many people were not convinced that the services should be cut as drastically as the governor's budget cut it. And the impact of cutting services like that would have been put on the backs of municipalities, because if you're not handling your mental health issues, your developmental disability issues, or your libraries, or you know, a whole host of other very harsh cuts that were made, you would have been dealing with those things on the local level, because if there's no other place to go, they're going to go to that local town hall or that local library, if that library was going to remain open.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah, I always would've wondered.
you know, I only touched on a few of the cuts, but I can say that there have been many people who have come up to talk about the devastating impact of the cuts. We essentially were just working on the issues revolving around developmental disabilities. I sit on the Developmental Disability and Intellectual Disability Caucus. And it's something that really, you know, we have people who are taking care of family members well into their 70s and 80s, and they're fearful what's going to happen to their family members should they pass away.
Yeah, we deal
And
with that.
that's really the issue. I mean, we have some 3,000 people that are on the waiting list, although the waiting list tends to disappear every once in a while.
Yeah,
And it doesn't really, the people don't disappear, they're
no,
still
they're
there.
still there. Yeah,
The
well,
list goes away. But, you know, some people are, they did a story about the Kings in the, I don't know if it was in the Day or the Bulletin. I read both papers regularly. But they're from Lebanon. And they're taking care of their grandson. And the cutoff for the Department of Developmental Services to find housing for someone was 70. And Mr. King was 70 2 months after their cutoff date. And they've been taking care of their grandson, and they're not complaining about it. I'm not complaining about it, but they're starting to reach the point where things are much more difficult to handle. You know, I'm going to be 60 this year, so I find that things are a little more difficult to do than when I was 20. So they were hoping to find him a residential placement that would be close for them to get him comfortable with it, to make sure he was settled in, and still allow family to go visit him.
Exactly.
You know, he clearly knows who his family is, and at the same time, they are just worried that if they don't get him settled in, that they may become ill and not be able
not be able to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, we have that all the time, especially in my work. Dominic
Dealing
has
with
it.
it. This is
Well,
like
we just had it.
second year in a row. I have one of
Well, we
my
were
family
just doing-
members have been taking care of it.
Right.
And unfortunately, they're going through a serious illness, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure how long that they're going to last. I just
Right.
had another one of my clients.
Yeah.
His mom took care of him, and he lived with her for all these years, and
No,
she passed away last
We
year.
we have a person trying to come out of the long-term care facility today. His thing is up, the facility's contract or whatever is up, and they haven't got a placement for him. Follow the money, didn't see, I don't know what's going on, and they're worried, well, he'll probably go into homeless shelter.
Right.
You know, if the individual will go there.
Right.
Yeah, it is tragic that we have so many of these difficulties.
Again, it's not there. It's not just one family. It's
No.
there are many
Many.
families.
Yeah.
And it's always been my concern when we close down institutions. And it was a great move that we had to close down Mansfield Training School
Right.
and many of the other areas, and we closed down Norwich State Hospital
Right.
and Fairfield Hills, and we downsized CVH, and we said that the people that were being taken care of were going to be okay. We were going to, sort of bless them as it may be.
And community, well, we didn't build the community infrastructure.
Correct. We
That-
we never
that's
followed through with it.
Exactly.
To provide those resources that
Right.
were necessary. We're looking at closing down Southbury. Now, Southbury is very expensive. We have a number of
Yep.
people there, but
Oh,
we
yeah.
have 305 people who live there. And, we have to make sure that they're going to be settled in. And at the same time, we also have to look at a variety of other things that happen when we close down buildings. So for a long time, we had the Norwich State Hospital site closed down, and we've since, in the last couple of years, put in millions of dollars to deal with the brownfields that were left behind. And I think that if, my thing is to first, we take care of the residents that are living there. We make sure the workers are working someplace. And then we have to remember that we can't just let buildings sit fallow
there, right.
and rot away. We have an obligation to take care of the assets that we own as a
Left
state
behind,
and handle them in an appropriate fashion so that we're not just letting them rot. And ultimately, it costs future generations millions and millions of dollars to clean them up. And so that's one of the things that we put in the bill for closing Southbury, that the agency has to provide the legislature with 6-month updates on what they're doing, what they're going to do with the buildings that are left empty, where they're going to put them, are they going to have to dismantle them, if they're going to come down, how are we going to handle taking them down? It's not just, it's not just simple to just walk away.
Well, this whole process is not going to be simple at all, and I know because I did actually listen to that part of the Appropriations Committee, and the discussion that came out of that, and actually having set up these kind of homes before in my past, I do understand what it takes in order to be able to do this.
I love Cathy because you have vision planning. When you're talking about doing something, and that's my disagreement with a lot of people. They do stuff without looking at the consequences of the action, what's going to happen down the road, how are you going to do it, how are you going to finance it, and all that. And and that's.
Actually, I love planning. I'm not
well,
a planner by, I'm a planner by nature,
by
but I'm
nature.
not a planner by education, but I love planning. My sister Linda was a municipal planner up in the Capital Region Council of Governments, and she passed away from cancer. But before she passed away, she did some work on what we all refer to as Columbus Boulevard. And originally, that was going to be 4 lanes of road on either side with no stopovers. So she was one of the main people who put in the boulevard that goes down, so it allows people when they're crossing over to actually have a place to stop safely before they move along. It was a vision, and she and I often talked about the plans of looking at when you're looking at a program or building something, what are the impacts of it? How does it happen? What are you trying to accomplish? How much does it cost? You have to look at a whole host of different issues with it. She worked on, I think it's called the Dutch Hill, or the housing projects that are up in Hartford, and she worked on the Sailor's Arch up there to make sure that, because they kept having people run into the Sailor's Arch, they wanted to protect them. So she said, instead of having they were going to close them off, and she said, you don't really want to close them off. If you really want to have business and activity in a city, you don't want to close off some of your beautiful infrastructure. You want to have people see it.
See it, right.
So she came
Absolutely.
up with putting of the large planters that are there, probably the size of this table, so
Yeah.
it stops anybody from running into it, so
into it,
it's
right.
not damaging it. Much akin to the boulevard, you want people to be able to have pedestrian or foot traffic around so that when people come visit an area,
Well-
they'll stop at a local restaurant, they'll go.
Well,
in-
that's what you've done.
That's
Yeah.
what you do.
That's why I love this
They-
stuff. It's
Right,
really
right,
exciting.
where you are. I mean, yeah, you have the beautiful area that's up there that you
Mm-hmm.
can walk around, easy to easy to do, and you want to visit, and of course, but you've got a great infrastructure that you've.
We had some problems with infrastructure when I first. I'm also a first selectman, so that your so your residents know.
what I'm,
and you-
what I'm
so-
talking about.
So I came up with a 20-year plan in 5-year increments, and came up with a concept of both on the budget side and on the infrastructure side on what we were going to do and what we needed for resources. So I've decreased on the operating side of the budget at the 0506 spending level. On the school side, we've gone up, and on our debt, we've gone up, but the debt has been used to service our infrastructure. So overall, this year we have a no mill increase. We'll be voting on that. I bring all my budgets to referendum because it allows more people to be involved in the process. And so we go to referendum and hear from the people. I mail out my entire budget to everybody in the town so that they can actually look at it and discuss it. I mail out along with that budget
You
package.
see why I love it, right?
Yeah, if
See
only I
that-
can get DSS to do this.
Yeah. So we know what's going on.
But you know,
Oh, my God.
I do like Kevin Lembo's way of doing the budget by having the ability to look on his website and see where things are, and you could make cuts and it spits out what the budget would look like. But if you're going to do projects, you have to know, A, what is the concept of the project?
Right.
B, how are you going to pay for it? And C, what is the end result? So you have to have, it's a whole host of things. And I have wants, and I have needs and wants, and you do your needs first, and you try to filter in a couple of the small sort of wants. So I put a post clock up, and my goal is to, I've had it in my capital projects, and I had I had an economic development commission in town. When I first took over, we were very partisan, and they walked away, but I give them credit all the time, because they had an economic development commission. They had commissioned a plan, and I've taken that plan and instituted almost every idea in that plan. And I thank them because they gave me that basic skeleton of an idea, and I don't think a good idea comes from a Democrat or a Republican. It comes from somebody who loves their area.
Yeah.
And
And
I really
understand it.
thank them so much for doing that. I've expanded on that and come down with the detailed pieces of it, but they gave me the basics to build off of, and they had post clocks in there, so I always loved the idea, and I could never, I had so many other needs. We had roads to do and bridges to do and buildings to fix. We had to make everything ADA accessible, and and we were looking at planning and zoning, and my planning and zoning commission came up with a whole economic development plan, and where are we going to put our industrial section? Where are we putting our commercial area? We're a tiny town, so we can have all these great ideas and institute them with a whole bunch of really good people. And so we've done all of that, and now this year I was able to get one post clock. The short end of the story is I got this one post clock, and it lights up, and it has, and we're going to build a little, we're going to use some of the granite from the old burned out mill, and we're going to do a little structure around it and put some old-fashioned pansies over there and a couple of benches, and I haven't told my public works guys yet, so don't tell them. Shh, everybody, don't tell them. But we're going to build some steps down to the river so that people can go down there. We have the best fishing
You
in
got
the
great
whole
fishing.
state.
Yeah, you
We
got-
DEP stocks the river with both trout and salmon.
And salmon.
So
I'm going to be up there. I got my license.
The
And I got
best
it for free because
These-
of my age.
The best fishing in the whole state is in the Shetucket River in Sprague.
I can't believe how fast the time has gone. It's amazing. But do you want to say anything to your constituents out there from where you come from?
I love doing the work. I have so many exciting things that I'm working on. I have bills in for on veterans issues. You know, Eastern Connecticut has the largest population of veterans. I have a 100% exemption for disabled veterans. That bill's coming through my committee, made it out of veterans.
Oh, that's good.
I sit on, I'm the chair of planning and development, I'm the vice chair of aging, housing, and I'm missing one. I can't, and labor. And then I'm a member of transportation, and I'm a member of the Veterans Committee. And so I am on 4 caucuses. I'm on the Rural Caucus, I'm on the Sportsman's Caucus. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I think that it is what it is, so. And I'm on the IDDD
You and
caucus
me.
and the Women's Caucus. And I just was put on an interbranch committee that is a committee by President Looney that looks at ways for the different branches of government to work together. So,
Busy lady.
and I'm a first selectman too.
And you're a first selectman, too.
Yeah, that's my
Well,
second
Very,
job.
very good. Okay, well,
I think we got an open show next week.
we got an open show, we think.
think.
We don't know what we got next week, right?
Yep.
So it'll be, maybe I'll get the chicken back. Oh, love,
Thank you
love,
very much.
always love to have you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again. My people, love you. Please pray for me. We all pray for you. I need more prayers probably than all of you, but thanks again. We'll see you next week.